Welcome everyone to the second part of the tutorial. Today we're going to make widgets that are responsible for creating and joining rooms, and also we'll be able to create a room, and once you press join session, you will see list of available sessions and you'll be able to join. So the way we are going to test is that we're going to use our level blueprint and we are going to be adding those widgets to our viewport, so we'll be able to see it on the screen. But in this tutorial we are only going to work with our viewport, so we are not going to have a separate actor showing us the widgets. But in the next tutorials, once we are done with all the functionality, I'll show you how to implement it in actual actor and play it in your VR. So what I did, I created a widgets folder in our content folder. So right click, user interface, widget blueprint, and here we select user widget. Now let's call it WB create join session. So let's open it, and first thing we have to drag here, it's our canvas. So I'll go ahead and drag it here, and afterwards I want to have some kind of background, so I'll drop the image here. So I will not put a lot of efforts in designing, and I will not explain majority of the things I'm doing. So if you want to learn more about widgets, I have a specific video on my channel about widgets, so make sure you watch it, and you can see it on your top right corner. For now, I'm just going to do quick menu right here. I will make a background a little bit darker, and I'm going to select the centered anchor, so I'll put 0.5 alignment, and I will zero out those values. So now it's in the center. I will go ahead and draw as rounded box. Here I will have fixed radius, and I'll put 100 here. So here I have rounded box. Afterwards, we need to add some buttons. So the first button we're going to make is a create session. So I'll have a button, I'll have a text inside, and it will be responsible for create session. Like this. So I can make this button a little bit more purple, like that, and I will extend it. Afterwards, I'll select the anchor and I'll put it to the center, because if you don't do it, it will be aligning bad on your widget switcher. That's what we are going to do in the future. So I'll just zero out the X. Afterwards, I'll create another button, but before that, we're going to rename our create session. So btn create session. Afterwards, I'm going to duplicate this button. I'm also going to zero it out on X-axis. And I'll put it here. I'll make another tint, maybe some orange, like this. And here we'll have a join session. And I'll rename the button to btn join session. And the last button we're going to have is our quit button. So I'll put it right here. And I'll rename it to quit. And I'll have it as a grayish color, like that. And let's rename this button to btn quit. So now, basically that's it for this menu. All we have to do now is go to our graph and click on those buttons. So what we have to do, on every button, we have to press unclicked. So we're creating events that will be triggered once we click the button. So on create session, all we have to do is just to make an event. So I'll call it create session press. The same for join session. So join session pressed. And on quit, we don't need to do anything. So when we create session, we press the button. We just call create session pressed. The same for join. And I'll align them. And for quit, I'm just going to quit game. And we'll have a quit preference set to quit. So afterwards, we go back to our level and we have to create another widget. And this widget will be responsible for creating a session. So basically, let's duplicate the existing one. I'll call it WB create session. And in here, we can go inside. So instead of quit button now, we'll rename it to button back, so that we could go back to our main menu, and we'll make it a little bit smaller, and I'll just put it right here, and I'll call it back, like this. Afterwards, I'll delete join session, and I'll put create session in here on the bottom, and I'll rename this button to create server, like this. So now, if you go to your graph, you will see some errors. So basically what you have to do is just to delete those two, and we'll have to delete existing event dispatchers. So Unreal Engine offers us a default function called create session. And as you can see here, it accepts player controller, so basically who is creating the session. Then it has an input of how many public connections you want to have, so basically how many players can join the room. And for VR headsets, I'm not recommending it to put a big number here. And then we have option use LAN. So what is LAN? LAN is basically local network. If you have LAN deselected, it means that you're looking on global network, which you'll need to have a server for. But if you use LAN, it means that everyone with the same game version as you can connect to you in case you're using the same Wi-Fi. So if you're connected to the same Wi-Fi, you can be playing together. So that's what we are going to work in this tutorial. Of course, we're going to look for dedicated servers in future tutorials, but we're going to use LAN for our current tutorial. So for now, I'm just going to delete it. And as you can see here, we have also error here. So I'll delete it too. So after we press back, I want to create an event dispatcher, back button pressed, and I'll just call it here. Like this. Then we can come back to our designer. And as we have seen, so here we need two options. How many players are going to join the session and whether to use LAN or no. So I'll create a text here. I will name it create session. I will make it a little bit bigger, so maybe 240, and I will center it out. And also make sure you have anchors in the middle always, because it will not be displayed properly. And I will make it in the middle, so 0 out the X, like this. So create session. So as I've said, we can duplicate existing one, and we can ask how many users, so number of users. I'll align it to the left side, like this. And here, we'll have to create a combo box, but make sure you will choose the string combo box. So combo box will allow us to choose how many users we want. So in here, once you've created it, make sure you will also align it to the center anchor, like that. And I will make it a little bit bigger. And in here, you will see default options. So in default options, let's actually add some array items, maybe 10. And I will have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And by default, I will use 2, like this. So if you hit compile, you will see 2 appeared here. And if you put size in your search bar, you can select the font size. So I will choose it to 25, like this, so it was more visible. And afterwards, you remember, we have to choose whether we want to use LAN or no. So I'll duplicate the users. I will have the same X alignment as this one. So I'll copy it from here and put it here. And I'll create a checkbox. So checkbox, I'll put it here. So in checkbox, we have an option called image size. So if you put image size here, you will see a lot of image sizes. So let's go ahead and increase it. So I will put it maybe to 50 by 50. It will lose quality, but it's totally fine. And all we have to do is just to press shift right click on image size and put it in all images by shift left clicking. Like this. So as you can see, it has lost quality, but doesn't matter since we're using it just for testing. And here we can rename our text to use LAN. And maybe it will be a better idea to put it somewhere here. Like this. And create session, maybe somewhere here. By default, I want to make it checked. So here in checked state, I will put checked because we want to use LAN by default. So I will just double check if everything is 0.5. So our checkbox is done. We need to make alignment for 0.5 on both X and Y. And I'll put it somewhere here. Okay, perfect. Everything else does align. So now we can name everything so we understood what we are using. First of all, I will go to my combo box and I'll rename it to combo box player number. And checkbox, I'll just call use LAN with question mark, like this. So now we can go to our graph. And in here, once we press create server, we need to read all the data from those fields we have created here and create a session. So let's go ahead and create session. So it accepts player controller. So basically, who is creating the session? For this purpose, we can drag from here and use get player controller. And by default, it's already 0. So even if you don't use it, it's going to work. But I'll just use it for the purpose so you understood what is actually happening. Afterwards, public connections. So that's our combo box player number. We're getting selected option and we are converting it to integer. So to integer. And we can plug it here. Afterwards, whether we want to use LAN or no. So for this purpose, we can get our checkbox is checked and just plug this value to here. So once you create a session, means on success, it's up to you whether you want to use a new level or no. In my case, I'm using a new level, so I'm going to open level. So, and as you remember from previous tutorial, I've created a separate level for where I want our players to join. So I will use m_main, and I will go ahead and copy its value. Then I will go back to my create and join session, and I will paste it here. So make sure that it's exactly the same name because it's case sensitive. And afterwards, in options, we need to make a server as a listed server. So now let's go ahead to our VR template and we create another widget that will be a master widget that will hold all of our existing ones. So I'll duplicate my create join session. So I'll call WB server manager master, like this. And here I will delete all existing buttons, as well as in graph, I'll delete all existing buttons too. And all I have to do here is to add a widget switcher. This item is responsible for switching the widgets based on the events. So I will align it exactly to the center. So 0.5, 0.5, and 0 of those elements. And I can also delete a background because I don't need it. And in here, we can search for our widgets that we've created. So create join session and create session. So first one will be our create join session. We'll put it here. And afterwards, it will be followed by WB create session. So you can see we can switch the widgets. Afterwards, we need to make a switching functionality. So let's go ahead in our graph, and on event construct, we're going to get our create session, and here we're going to create and join session. So first of all, we'll assign on when we are creating the session. So once we click this button right here, we want to get to this widget right here. So once we click on create session, we want to go from this widget to this widget. So that's what we are going to do. In here, we're going to assign on this button pressed, and we're going to get our widget switcher and set active widget index to 1, since our WB create session is on the first array element in our widget switcher. And afterwards, here in our create session, we have back button. So let's get our WB create session, assign back button pressed, and now we're going to switch back to 0's element. So I'm going to copy this to here and put it on index 0. So to test it out, we're going to add it to viewport instead of having an actual actor. It will just speed up our process. Then, after everything works, I will show you how to implement it in VR. So I will go to my level blueprint. That's the best place to do it. And on event begin play, I'll create widget. Here, by class, I'll select WB, server, manager, master. Afterwards, I will add to viewport so that we could see it on the screen. And afterwards, I'll set scale to 0.7 and 0.7 on Y, like this. So now, once we simulate our game, you will see that widget is created here. And if we press quit, we'll quit the game. If we press create widget, we are here. If we press back, we are again on the main menu. So let's create a session for 3 users. So let's create a session. And as you can see, we're transferred to another level. And now what's important, this level is our server. And as you can see here, our VR pawn has spawned, but because we're in a viewport, we are not actually possessing this pawn. And our new game mode has created, and all of our classes here we have specified are also created. I mean, those classes right here in our main level. So now once we are able to create sessions, we need an ability to join sessions and see what rooms are actually available. So I will go ahead to my widgets folder again, and I'm going to create another widget. So for this purpose, I can click on my WB create session, and I'll call it WB join session. And in here, I can delete those elements right here, and I can expand the widget because we need our server list, therefore we need a little bit more space, and I'll move my back button to here. And in here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete create session. I'll hit compile and I'll see I have some errors. So we'll go to event graph and we'll also delete this piece of code. So hit compile. Then in here, I'm going to add a vertical box, and I will just make it broader like that. And make sure to center it out. So 0.5, 0.5, and 0 on both sides. Like this. And in here, we'll have 2 horizontal boxes. The one for heading and the one for server list. So I'll go ahead and look for horizontal box. I'll put it here. Like this. So in this horizontal box, I'll put a text. So I'll drag a text as a child of this box. And I'll make this text a little bit bigger. So increase the size like this, and I'll call it choose a room. So inside of here, I'll add another horizontal box like this. And in here, I will put a checkbox and a text like this. So text, I will align in the center, and checkbox, I'll just make it a little bit bigger. So in the image size, I can put it 50 by 50 by 50 like this. And text, I will also line it to the center. And I will use line question mark. And I'll make it also a little bit bigger. Maybe the same size as I have this text. It's 56, so I'll put 56 here too. So in this horizontal box, I'll put to the right. And I'll use fill option. And afterwards, I'll add a button. So button. Maybe I'll just copy this button right here to horizontal box right here. Like this. And here I'll have text refresh. I'll have a button to more orange style. And on my button, I mean on my text, I'll create a padding. So from left, I will have around 20 pixels, or maybe like 80 pixels. Yeah, 80 looks good, and right also 80. And the horizontal box right here, I will just push it to the right, like this. And maybe I want to make some padding on the right, so maybe 40 pixels, like this. So there we go, we have a pretty good looking menu. And now another item we have to add to our vertical box is our server list. So for this purpose, we need our scroll box. And I'll put it inside our vertical box right here. So here we have our list. We can press fill so that we filled all the space here. And now we want to have all the available items right here. So what do you want to do? We'll create a separate card for one server. But before that, I will actually go ahead and rename all the data we have right here so we could know what is what. So refresh button, I'll call button refresh. Back button is called back already. For our checkbox, I'll call it use LAN with question mark. And maybe I'll add some padding to the right so it was a little bit separate from our LAN. And our scroll box, I'll call it SB server list. I want the choose a room text also be a variable, by the way. So let's call it loading text. So once I press refresh, I want this text to change on loading. And once we have all the server list loaded, I want this text to change back to choose a room. So for this purpose, in the beginning, I have to store this value in a variable. So on the event construct, I'll have to use my loading text, get text, and I'll have it to promote to a variable. So we'll call it initial text, and I'll put it right here. So now we are getting our button refresh. We are adding onClicked event. And the first thing we do is that we change our loading text, set text, and we are setting it to loading. And also make sure your server list is a variable, and hit compile and save. Then coming back to our button refresh, we're going to get our server list and we're going to clear children. It means that all the servers that were here before will be cleared after pressing refresh button. And afterwards, Unreal Engine provides us with a really wonderful function so we don't have to code ourselves. It's called find sessions. And here we can see how many results we want to show to our user. So I will choose around 50 and use LAN. We can get our use LAN checkbox is checked and plug it here. Like this. So now we have our results, but now we need to implement a way to actually display the result. So let's go ahead to our VR template again, and I'll create another widget. So I'll go ahead, right click, user widget, widget blueprint, and I'll call it session item, like this. And in session item, I will double click on it, and in here, I will put a size box, like this, and make sure that after size box, you will choose desired on screen. And you will see this little dot here. So now it's little, don't worry, it will be fixed. Now we'll create another size box inside of this size box, and we'll manage the height. So our height override will be around 60. So as you can see now, our height has changed. Afterwards, we'll add a border that will be basically our background. So I'll add a border here, and color of border, I will make some kind of dark accent. So in our border, we'll have a horizontal box. And inside horizontal box, we'll put another size box. And inside the size box, we'll put text. So yeah, that's a lot of items, but it will look good. Like this. So we'll put the text in the middle. And our text, let's call it session name. So we'll display the session name and make sure it's a variable. And our size box will be filled like this. And make sure you stretch it. So we align our text in the center. And let's rename it to session name. Like this. Afterwards, we can duplicate our size box, so Control D, and here we'll have users. So we'll go ahead and call it user count, and it will be also a variable. And let's maybe call it 8 out of 20, like this. So, and as you can see now, we have some kind of overlapping. To fix this, we need to set custom widths for our size box. So in here, I'll select 150. And also, it still overlaps with our previous size box, so we need also to override its widths. And I'll set it to 350. So as you can see now, it's getting fixed. And maybe I want to put text in the middle, but to the left alignment, like this. Afterwards, we can duplicate our another size box, and our text we can rename to latency. So it will show our ping, and make sure it's a variable too. And here I can put 100 milliseconds. And afterwards, we create another size box. And here, instead of text, now we'll have a button. So I will take a button and put it here. So we can make this button fill all the space. So in the size box, I will stretch it like this. And in the button, I will add a text. And I will call it join. So button background, I'll just make some kind of purple, like this. And button, I will rename to btn join. And make sure still everything is a variable, all those fields. And it should look something like that. So to test how it might look in our join session, we can go to Designer tab, and in here we can look for WB session item and put it inside here. And as you can see, it will be added like this. But now it seems like we need some spacing between them, so let's actually go ahead and put some spacing. To do that, we'll go to the second size box, this one, and we'll implement a top padding of 15 pixels, maybe like that. And let's actually go to our join session again, put those items, and as you can see now, they are spaced between each other. Okay, so let's go back to our session item, go to graph, and here we will be interested in our construct. So to create this item, we need some data about our session. So to do this, in our event construct, we need to set all of those variables to our session data, but we don't have information about session. So let's go ahead and create a variable, let's call it session, and it will be of type blueprint session result, like this. And make sure you will set it to instance editable and expose and spawn. We'll pass this variable through our join session right here from result. So now we can get our session, and from session we can get server name, we can get current players, we can get max players, and we can get ping in milliseconds. So first we're going to work with server name. So sometimes our server name can be too big, right? And we want just to cut the first, for instance, 14 characters, because if it's too big, it will put a lot of space and just overlap with all of our other data. So first thing I want to check if that length of our server name is bigger than, for instance, 10 symbols. And in case it is, we're going to create a branch right here. And maybe let's create a sequence so that we could do the server name separately. And I'll get this data to the top like this. So in case it is bigger than 10 symbols, what do we want to do? We want to get our server name and use function called left. As you can read, return the leftmost given number of characters, and we'll return 10. Afterwards, we'll get our session name, set text, and we'll set it to the result of this pin. Like this. So it'll basically chop our text. Otherwise, what do we want to do? We want just to take the server name directly and set our text directly. Like this. Okay, once we are done with that, we can go ahead and do other data. So this is pretty simple. So for current players, to show it in the way like current players out of max players, we can go ahead and convert the integer to string. Like this. And afterwards, we'll get current players, append slash max players. And we'll go ahead and set our user count, set text, to the result of this pin right here. And we'll put it on sequence then node, like this. So for ping in milliseconds, we also convert it to string, so like this. And we append milliseconds in the end. Afterwards, we're getting our latency, set text, to the result of this append node. Like this. So make sure you have the same code. I will just pause here. And after you're done, you can hit compile and save. Now we can program our button join. So once we want to join our session, so let's create onClick event. And basically on click, we're getting player controller. And Unreal Engine provides us with function join session. So we connect player controller here. And we're getting our search result. It means our session to here. And on failure, we can make a print string, failed to join, just for us. So we can hit compile and save. Now all we have left is go to our WB join session. Our find session gives us the result of all the sessions. So first thing we have to do is to use for each loop, and this for each loop makes sure it's on success. And for each element, we create widget, and our class will be WB session item. And as you can see, session has appeared here. If it has not, make sure it's instance editable and exposed on spawn. So we can connect our array element to here, and afterwards we are getting our server list, add child, and we connect return value from creating our widget to here. And on complete, it means that all the sessions have been found. We just go ahead and set our loading text, set text back to our initial text, like this, uncompleted. And also, when you find sessions, make sure you will connect getPlayerController to here, because now we need to know which player controller is looking for a server. And after you're done, you can press compile and save. We have to go to our server manager master, and since we have created a new widget, we need to add it here. So let's go ahead and add WB join session as the third element in our widget. So you can check it right here. And let's go ahead to our graph, and we have to bind switching on that session. So I'll go ahead, get WB create join session, and assign join session pressed. And here we can get our widget switcher and set active index to 2. And our WB join session has also a button, a back button, and we need to assign on back button pressed. And for this event, we can use the same event as is listed here. So I will put it down like this. So we're switching to zeros element. So now let's go ahead and test it. I'm launching in single player, so we can create session, join session, go back, and quit. So to test this session, as I've told you in previous tutorial, that we're going to be using a standalone mode for 2 players, because standalone means end user game. So it means the closest version of having 2 people with the same version of the game on 2 separate headsets. So I will click play standalone, and I will choose new editor window pipe, and I will actually create 2 sessions. And as you can see, we have 2 standalones. So basically now those are 2 players that actually have headsets. So you and your friend. So one of you has to create a session, maybe for 6 users. He can create a room. So now he's spawned in our main level, the level we have created, and other one can go and join session. So we can choose LAN and click refresh. So now as you can see, it's loading and it needs some time to get a session, and there we go. We got our name of the level, how many players are in the session, ping of the session, and it's really little because we are hosting server on our computer, and we can join. So after you press join, and now we're using VRPON, we cannot see each other, and we haven't gotten to spawning rules, and we'll get into this in separate tutorial. So that is basically it. And let me know if you have some issues. Make sure you write the comment, like the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.